Chapter 28. She pointed to a piece of brocade and said, "This will do." That was a bolt of lotus green colored material. In general, most unmarried females would not choose this material, because lotus green color was very particular. If a normal female wore this color, it would easily look too old-fashioned. If one did not have an air of nobility, wearing this color would not be able to suppress it and would be very ugly. Shinrochio's eyes slightly flashed and she smiled. Why did little five pick such a dark color? Young ladies have to wear bright and bright, just like your two older sisters. This kind of dark color is too old-fashioned. Correct. Runwanyun also followed. Even though she was happy to see the first household's people make a fool of themselves, but this lotus green color was too out of line. If it was seen by outsiders, they would think that their Shun family's young ladies were all old-fashioned. Qing still wanted to show off her skills at the chrysanthemum banquet, so how could Shin Miao drag her down? Shin Yu and Shin Qing were laughing secretly. Shin Qing said, "I see that this lotus green color is also quite good." Fifth younger sister had never worn such a dark color before. It is also good to try it. I heard that this color is also very noble. If it was not that I have already picked the material, I would also want to try that lotus green color. Shun Yu said with a smile. Li Liang looked at the 2D daughters of the Shin family who had a sweet mouth and a sword in their hearts, and then looked at Shan Miao who had a calm expression and sighed in her heart. The D daughter of the first household of the Shin family, Shin Xian, was stupid and ignorant, and everyone in the Ding capital knew that. But who knew that those two Tangjia who looked kind and gentle actually had such a vicious heart? They actually used a method to make Shin Miao look bad. She somewhat sympathized with Shun Miao. General Shun was outside protecting the country, but his own D daughter was schemed against by relatives in the residence. It was really somewhat pitiful. Thinking of this, she said tactfully, this lotus green color is indeed somewhat too solemn. If it is a chrysanthemum banquet, one might as well choose some relaxing colors. Why not, young lady, choose this jade white one? Shin Miao glanced at Li Liang. She was a rare honest person. In her previous lifetime, she also reminded herself like this, but at that time Shin Miao wholeheartedly believed in her two Tangjia and auntie and did not listen to her words. Hearing this, she tactfully thanked him. "There's no need. I like this bolt of lotus green material." Her reply made Shin Qing and Shin Yu, who were frowning, to heave a sigh of relief. Shin Yu smiled. Fifth younger sister's eyesight is indeed good. As such, one will have to trouble Lady Li to tailor the clothes for us. Lin Yang sighed in her heart, but did not say anything more. He did as he was told and began to measure the young ladies' bodies. From the beginning to the end, old Shun Foreign was reclining on the couch with her eyes closed, as if she did not hear anything at all. As long as it was related to money, she was always happy to pretend that she didn't know anything. Today the clothes and fabrics were all taken out from the public purse, and the money from the public purse was handed over to Rinwanyun to manage. After they finished measuring the clothes, Lin Yang left. Rinwanyun then smiled. These children are all grown-up young ladies, and when our Shan residence's young ladies go out, they cannot be looked down upon by others. Therefore, I made some jewelry for the ladies, and they will be ready for use on the day of the chrysanthemum viewing banquet. As she spoke, she instructed Xiang Lan, who was behind her, to bring out a few boxes and gave one to Shin Qing and one to Shin Miao. Shin Miao's box was heavy. Rinwanyun looked at her, and her tone was exceptionally affectionate. Second, Shin saw that you were busy preparing for Guangwen Tang's academy examinations these days, so she made for you when she was shopping at the jeweler's shops. It is all according to the best style, and hope that you will like it. On the high seat, old Shun Foreign's brows wrinkled and seemed to want to open her eyes, but after pausing, she continued to pretend to sleep. Many thanks to Second Shin. Shin Miao also returned the courtesy. Shin Qing and Shun Yu were able to choose their own style and send it back, but they did not bring her along when they were shopping at the shops, and even said that they did not want to disturb her. At the end, they gave her a gift, and now it was too late to change. Then let us go back and take a look first. Shin Yu pulled Shinrochio and winked at Shin Miao. Fifth younger sister's jewelry must be the heaviest one. Shin Miao smiled gently and did not speak. Upon returning to the western courtyard, Shin Miao threw the box to one side and did not look at it in detail. When Jingzhe saw it, she asked curiously, "Young lady is not going to open it to take a look?" What is there to look at? What is the difference anyway? Xin Miao answered without turning her head back. Jingzhe wanted to speak, but stopped. Every time the jewelry that was obtained from the second and third household, her young lady would love it so much that she could not put it down. Unfortunately, even they, as servants, could see that the jewelry was somewhat of a nouveau riche. Xin Miao had been brought up by the second and third household to have an exaggerated temperament, and what she loved the most were these rather tacky gold and silver. Xin Miao thought about it and reached out to open the box. When it was opened, a bright golden light rushed out. Inside were bracelets and necklaces made of gold and silver, and there were even hairpins. The ruby that was inlaid on top was big, but the quality was very poor. Jingzhe could not help but reveal a trace of anger. Xin Miao almost laughed. These things, before she married, her jewelry were all like this. This kind of gold hairpins and silver necklaces, even the young ladies in the countryside would not wear them. Every time she wore bright-colored clothes and those glittering jewelry, she was just like a moving box. In front of the gentle and graceful Xin Yu and the generous and bright Xin Qing, she was really like a feet-washing maid. Now that these things fell in front of Xin Miao, she felt that it was really ridiculous. Jingzhe observed her young lady and was surprised to find that she did not reveal the same excited expression as before. Just as she was surprised, she saw Xin Miao closing the box and pushing it to Jingzhe. Find a pawn shop to pawn it and buy a silver hairpin on the way back. It does not need to be too good, just an engraved one will do. Young lady, Jingzhe said in surprise, if one were to pawn it like this, if it was discovered by the people in the eastern courtyard, it would be inevitable that it would be used as a raft. Even though she was very happy that Xin Miao finally did not like these gold and silver like before, but this kind of action was still too bold. Since these jewelry cannot be worn anymore, what is the use of keeping it? It is better to pawn it for real gold and silver, as it would be more convenient to do things on normal days. Xin Miao lightly answered. One must pay attention to practicality in everything. This was the logic that she understood when she was an empress. The Shun residents would give monthly silver according to the quota, and every young lady would get 2 taels of silver a month. But how much did Xin Yu and Xin Qing get subsidized by their family? Xin Miao did not know, but there was one thing that was certain. She did not have that subsidy. She was clearly a young lady from the general's residence, but she was not as generous as her 2 older sisters. She used to think that it was because second Xin and third Shan were willing to subsidize their daughter, but what about now? The public's money was all controlled by Ran Wanyun, but Shen Gui and Shan Wan usually had to handle matters in court, and her own salary was not enough. So how would there be spare money? It was Shen Xian who used his own life, blood, and sweat to gallop on the battlefield. Thus His Majesty rewarded him a lot. And these rewards, Shen Xian had never embezzled it, and were all given to the public. To take their family's money but treat her like this, only old Foreign's family would be so shameless. She had to think of a way to split the family. Chapter 29. The 68th year of Ming Qi's chrysanthemum banquet finally came. Guangwen Tang was different from the past as the academy examinations became a battle of talents. As long as one had talent, they could casually go up on stage to challenge their classmates. This would show the youthful vitality and also let others see that the students of Guangwen Tang had their own merits. Thus, the male and female students had to be on the same stage, which meant that it was not like the past where it was divided into male and female groups. If one liked, the females could challenge the males in strategy and archery, while the males could challenge the females in the 4 arts. However, it was rare to see such a scene. Early in the morning, the Shun residence was bustling with activity. In the western courtyard, Shuangjiang carefully placed a silver hairpin on Xin Miao's hair and smiled. Young lady, it is done. Shuangjiang was the best at combing hair, and previously Xin Yu wanted to ask her to comb her hair, but Shuangjiang was personally ordered by Xin Foreign to be Shan Miao's maid. Since Shuangjiang was unwilling, Xin Yu could not do anything. Young lady's outfit is really good looking. Bai Lu smiled when she saw it, but was somewhat hesitant. It is just that the head looks too plain. Xin Miao's hair was black and thick, and was combed into an exquisite cloud bun by Shuangjiang, looking elegant and unique. Even after reaching the marriageable age, Shun Miao still combed her hair into a double-ring bun like a maid. With a change of style, it looked like she had grown up a lot. That round and cute face seemed to be delicate and graceful, and finally had some taste of a young lady. There was only a silver hairpin stuck on her head, making her look rather pitiful. Guyu could not help but show anger on her face. This Shen residence had a big business, but Shen Miao did not have a single piece of jewelry that she could take out today. The entire Shen residence was raised by Shen Xian, but they did such cruel and unscrupulous things. But Shen Miao was unable to say anything. Why? It was because they had made jewelry for Shen Miao, and it was only gaudy gold jewelry. If one were to wear it out, one would definitely be laughed at. Shen Miao only took a look at Guyu and guessed what Guyu was thinking and could not help but shake her head and laugh. In fact, since young, the second and third household of the Shen family had racked their brains to cultivate her lousy hobbies and did all they could to make her believe that those dazzling gold jewelry were the best. In this way, they could say to the outside world that it was not the second and third branches who deliberately embarrassed the first branch's daughter. It was because they loved this kind of glittering gold ornament. Looking at Shen Miao, who was tirelessly wearing those exaggerated jewelry, everyone had this kind of understanding that the daughter of the first household of the Shen residence was greedy and loved money, and was unbearably vulgar. Although gold was good, it was not meant to be worn. Guyu was afraid that Shen Miao would be sad and quickly change the topic, but that Linyang really has good craftsmanship. Young lady's outfit is really beautiful. One did not know if it was because she pitied Shen Miao in her heart, but the embroidery of the clothes that Linyang sent over was surprisingly exquisite. As if taking into consideration that her appearance was on the small side, and that the lotus green color would inevitably be old and heavy, the hem of the skirt was embroidered with large begonia flowers. The flowers were vivid and lifelike, blooming and gorgeous, truly extremely beautiful. Shen Miao also wore it well, and did not look uncomfortable at all. Shuangjiang and Bai Lu looked at each other and saw the surprise in each other's eyes. Now that Shen Miao could even suppress such a heavy color, one did not know what was going on. Let's go. Shen Miao stood up. One cannot wait too long. Just as they walked out of the courtyard, they saw that the begonia flowers in the garden were growing more and more. She stopped her footsteps and pinched a small one and rolled it into her hair bun, like the icing on the cake. Young lady is really good looking, Guyu praised. Gue Momo just came out from the small kitchen and prepared some snacks for Shen Miao on the horse carriage. When she carried the basket out and saw Shen Miao, she could not help but be surprised. She had served Shen Miao for so many years, and Shen Miao was brought up by her milk. It could be said that she had watched Shen Miao grow up, but today she felt that Shen Miao was very unfamiliar. Her temperament was calm and steady, and coupled with that noble lotus green color, it was not an exaggeration to say that she was a princess. She almost did not hold the basket in her hands tightly and just stood there foolishly, until Bai Lu said with a smile, "What is Gue Momo looking at?" Gue Momo was surprised for a moment and was about to say a few beautiful words out of habit when she suddenly remembered that today was the chrysanthemum banquet. With Shen Miao being so outstanding, would it not suppress Shen Yu and Shen Qing? She swallowed the words of praise that were already at the tip of her tongue and turned her head with a worried expression. "Miss, the color of this dress is really too heavy. Miss is so young. Why do you need to wear such a color? It will only cover up your good complexion for no reason. Why not go back and take that peach-colored jacket embroidered with magpies? It looks pink and tender. Also this hairpin." This old servant remembered that second foreign had bestowed a lot of it. If this goes on, no one would say that the young ladies in the general residence are still so plain. Gu Yu's lips twitched. That peach-colored jacket embroidered with magpies was given by Ran Wan Yun, and the color was tacky. In addition to wearing gold and silver jewelry all over her face, she looked like a young lady from a rich family in the countryside. If she went to the chrysanthemum banquet today, Shen Miao would definitely be laughed at by everyone. Gue Momo clearly had ill intentions, and just as she was about to reprimand Shen Miao, she heard Shen Miao speaking softly. "Ming Qi is now prosperous and the people are at peace. The common people live and work in peace, but His Majesty advocates frugality. In the ways of the world, extravagance and waste is the lowest, so what is wrong with being a little plain? If others were to see it, they would only say that our general residence is honest and upright. It is a good thing and not bad. As for clothes, there is no need to care about it." Shen Miao's lips hooked up. Today things are admiring the flowers and people are competing with their talents. It has nothing to do with clothes. Her words were gentle and affectionate, yet they contained an unquestionable majesty. Gue Momo's mind was in a mess. She was not afraid of Shin Miao's anger, but when would Shin Miao be able to talk to her with so much logic? Shin Miao usually did not like to do homework, and thus did not have a brain. Now with so much logic and so genteel, it made Gue Momo, who was a boorish person who had not studied before, did not know how to refute. Bai Lu could not help but laugh out loud and quickly kept quiet with a solemn expression. It was just that the carefree look in her eyes could not be concealed. Gue Momo could not refute, and was even seen as a joke by the few maids. Her heart was annoyed, but she could not understand why in this trip back to the residence. Every time she conversed with Shun Miao, she would always be at a disadvantage. Saying that she was sharp-tongued, Shun Miao's tone was very gentle. Saying that she was gentle, every word and sentence made one speechless. Gue Momo was somewhat embarrassed as she handed the basket in her hands to Guyu. This is a snack for young lady on the journey. There is still some distance before the chrysanthemum banquet, so one must not starve young lady. She said to Shun Miao, this old servant will return to the courtyard to do some work. Go. Shin Miao replied lightly. After Gue Momo left, Gu Yu and Bai Lu were extremely happy. The more powerful Shun Miao was, the more she looked like a master. This way those in the Shun residence who did not know how to read would not dare to bully her. Just as they walked to the door, they saw two carriages parked at the door. The first carriage was ready to set off, but the second one was empty. Xin Qing's maid, Chun Tao, was standing in front of the first carriage. Chapter 30. When Chun Tao saw Shin Miao, she quickly went closer to the carriage and said something to the people inside. Following that, she saw the curtain of the carriage being pulled open. Inside was Shin Yu, Xin Qing, Run Wanyun, and Chen Rochio. When the four of them saw Shen Miao's appearance, they could not help but be startled. Chen Rochio's eyes flashed, but Ran Wanyun frowned. Little Five, why are you dressed so plainly? That's right. Xin Qing could not wait to speak. It looks really ugly, and it is better to wear something bright. There is a bright yellow new dress in my room. Chun Tao, bring fifth younger sister to change out of that dress and jewelry. Why is she not wearing anything? If one did not know, one would think that the general residence treated you unfairly. She secretly suppressed the jealousy in her heart. In fact, Shen Qing was considered a delicate and pretty beauty, and in addition to her straightforward and generous life outside, she looked like a well-behaved, noble young lady. But there was one thing that she cared about the most, which was that her complexion was not very fair and was more of a wheat color. Which female did not wish for their skin to be as fair as snow? She did not dare to say anything about Shun Yu's fair skin, but Shun Miao's skin was fair, and today she was wearing a lotus green dress which made her skin look even more like snow. As a result of this, among the three daughters of the Shun residence, her complexion was the dullest, and naturally she was unhappy. Shin Yu carefully sized up Shun Miao and saw that her hair was combed into a small and exquisite bun, and when matched with the lotus green dress, she looked very dignified. Today, she did not wear those gold and silver jewelry, and even though it was plain, there was a natural and noble feeling. She smiled gently. Fifth younger sister, not to mention the clothes, jewelry must be worn. After all, it is the face of our residence, and if Zumu sees you dressed like this, she will not be happy. Moreover, why did you comb your hair like this? You are still young, and the previous double-ringed bun was already very good. Guyu was so angry that her face was somewhat pale, but as a servant, she could not contradict her mistress. She could only gnash her teeth in hatred. This second and third household of the Shun residents all had ulterior motives and did not hesitate to harm their own niece. They could not wait for Shun Miao to dress up as rustic as possible. Shin Miao sneered in her heart. Shin Yu even brought out old Shin Foreign and knew that she was most afraid of old Foreign's prestige. As for combing her hair, Shin Yu was only 1 year older than her, so how could she be considered young? She combed her hair into a flying fairy bun, and her pink gauze dress was as light as a fairy. She wanted to be a peerless and talented woman, so why did she have to be a foil? After they finished, they saw that Shin Miao did not say a word and only smiled at them, not knowing what she was thinking. Finally, Chen Qing felt a little uncomfortable under that gaze and scolded the maid standing beside the carriage. Chun Tao, why are you still in a daze? Aren't you going to help fifth sister change her clothes? No need. Xin Miao interrupted her words and put on a sad expression. There is a reason for dressing up like this today. I like the jewelry that second aunt gave me very much. It's not that I didn't wear it on purpose. The few of them looked at each other and did not know what Xin Miao meant. Gu Yu and Jing Zhe also looked at each other before looking at Shun Miao with some confusion. Father is now far away in the northwest, leading the soldiers in a bloody battle. The Xiongnu have not retreated, and the soldiers are clad in cold iron clothes. I am in the capital but am wearing luxurious clothes and eating jade food, leisurely enjoying the flowers and reciting poems. It is really shameful. Shun Miao lowered her head slightly and her voice became softer. Last night there was a bodhisattva who entered my dreams and wanted me to pray devoutly. Thus I made up my mind to wear plain clothes and light colors. Before Father's triumphant return, I will not wear bright clothes or wear jewelry. No one expected that Xin Miao would suddenly say such words. Normally, she would not be able to speak clearly in her timid words, not to mention being so particular about her words. Xin Yu and Shun Qing were so shocked that they could not speak. Chen Roqiu stroked her forehead thoughtfully. It was Ren Wanyun who had an awkward expression on her face. Xin Miao's words meant that she was the only one who prayed devoutly for her father. Then what about the rest of the Shen family? But to let her Qing'er wear such plain clothes to the chrysanthemum banquet, she would definitely not do it. Ren Wanyun gritted her teeth and advised lovingly, even so, you are also a young female. Why the need to have such heavy thoughts? Just relax properly at the chrysanthemum banquet. Xin Miao suddenly bowed to Ren Wanyun, begging Second Shun to fulfill Shan Miao's filial piety. They were standing at the entrance of the Shun residence, and there were many passers-by. With Shun Miao's bow, the commoners could not help but cast curious glances over. Ren Wanyun could make Xin Miao wear bright clothes to maintain the Shen residence's face, but how could Ren Wanyun not fulfill Xin Miao's filial piety? Her own eldest brother was fighting a war in the northwest region, and it was fine if she did not pray, but to not fulfill his daughter's filial piety, what kind of intentions did she have? Ren Wanyun's face suddenly turned green. She did not expect that Xin Miao would actually answer like this, and what made one feel suffocated was that she could not refuse. Ren Wanyun quickly let Chun Tao help Xin Miao up and said, "This child, how can Second Shin not fulfill your filial piety? It is hard for you to have such thoughts at such a young age. Never mind. Be plain then." Xin Qing was still somewhat unconvinced, but it was not good to refute her mother's opinion. Xin Yu and her daughter seemed to have seen something, and when they looked at Xin Miao again, their gaze was different. But Ren Wanyun smiled. "This carriage of ours is no longer able to fit, so let the housekeeper prepare another carriage specially for little five. It is also spacious to sit in. Little five will follow us in the second carriage, and will enter together later." Every year during the chrysanthemum banquet, Xin Miao would always sit in the same carriage with this mother and daughter pair. It was just one more person. How could they not be able to squeeze in? Today's attitude was just deliberate. Ren Wanyun also had her own considerations. Xin Qing had reached the age to look for a family, but Shen Xian's official position was higher than Shen Gui's, so if there was a high status, perhaps he would first consider Xin Miao. Xin Miao's character was stupid, and as long as there was no one to lead her, one feared that she would make a lot of jokes. Only in this way could Xin Qing's generosity and propriety be shown. Thus she specially prepared 2 carriages. Chen Roqiu and her daughter had the same idea as her and naturally would not refuse. "All right, follow Second Shin's instructions." Xin Miao smiled gently. Ren Wanyun was somewhat surprised as she did not think that Xin Miao would agree so easily. Xin Miao had always been timid and previously always stuck to Xin Yu and Shen Qing. One thought that it would be difficult for her to be alone in a carriage, but one did not expect that Xin Miao did not even raise any objections. In this way, it seemed that her prepared words were unnecessary. If there is nothing else, Xin Miao will go up the carriage first. She bowed to the 4 of them and went up her own carriage. That carriage was considered spacious, but it was not as exquisite as Ren Wanyun's. Guyu said angrily, "It is fine to let young ladies sit alone in the carriage, but to actually let others sit at the back. What kind of intentions is this?" Jingzhe looked at Shen Miao with some worry and sighed in her heart. Shen Miao's gaze was heavy as she looked at the candied plums on the small table, and her hands gradually clenched. She wanted to sweep the first household's face and deliberately widen the distance with the first household, so that she would become a joke and incur Shen Xian's infamy. She would like to see who would be the one causing trouble for who. Chapter 31. The chrysanthemum banquet was set in Yinbeitang, which was not far from Prince Gong's residence. This was a hall that was personally set up by the founding emperor and empress of Mingqi. This residence was originally an exquisitely trimmed garden of the previous dynasty, covering an area of a few thousand mu. The building was grand and exquisite. If it was not that it was too far from the city, the emperor and empress wanted to transform it into a corner of the palace. Even though it was far, it was a good place to enjoy the scenery. Especially in the October of every year, various chrysanthemum flowers would bloom. Because there were professionals who were in charge of planting the precious chrysanthemum seeds. Once it bloomed, it would be like being in a fairyland. And to do the examination here, it was considered very elegant. It would take about 2 hours to drive the horse carriage from Yinbeitang and the Shun residence. Thus there would be some snacks and food on the carriage, so that one would not be hungry. Guyu opened the basket that Gue Momo gave her and asked Shen Miao, "Why not, young lady, eat something? The journey is long, and one would only have strength after eating." Shen Miao looked at the things in the basket. Ice goat cheese, green onion rolls, spicy and oily leg. At first glance, it made one's mouth twitch. The colors were bright, and the smell was fragrant. Unfortunately, the taste of these things were too strong. Like the ice goat cheese and the spicy and oily leg, it was easy to stain one's clothes. Gue Momo had really meticulously prepared these foods. The fights between the females in the inner courtyard were mostly done in the open and in the dark, but when Shen Miao was in the inner palace of Mingqi, what she faced was the fight for favor between the concubines. Thus the level would be higher. These little tricks could not be put on the table. She shook her head and let Guyu cover the box before asking Jingzhe. "No need. Jingzhe has it here." Jingzhe carefully took out a small cloth bag from behind. That cloth bag was filled with small and exquisite pastries. Shen Miao did not trust the kitchen of the Shen residence, so she let Jingzhe bribe the steward in charge of purchasing and entrusted her to bring some pastries from outside. That steward only thought that Jingzhe was gluttonous and did not do anything, but was somewhat surprised that a maid like Jingzhe would actually be willing to buy Guangfuzhai's pastries. Guangfuzhai was one of the best pastry shop in the Ding capital, and even the concubines in the palace loved to eat it. In Shen Miao's previous life, she was not interested in Guangfuzhai's dim sum, but Wan Yu liked it so much that she would feel unhappy if she did not eat it for a day. At this moment, the pastry was only the size of Shen Miao's finger and was made into the shape of a flower. It was pitiful and cute, so Shen Miao gave some to Gu Yu and Jingzhe to eat. The two maids first did not dare, but after seeing Shen Miao's insistence, they could not decline and carefully took it over. After eating a mouthful, they were pleasantly surprised. "Young lady, this pastry is really delicious." Shen Miao smiled faintly. In fact, no matter how delicious the snacks were, how delicious could they be? It was just that they were made adorably and exquisitely, and females would always like good-looking things. When Wan Yu first got married, she even spent a lot of money to buy a pastry chef from Guangfuzhai, only hoping that in the bitter cold land of the Xiongnu, Wan Yu could still eat the pastries that she liked. Who knew? Who knew that halfway through, Wan Yu would perish and she did not even see her corpse? Shen Miao closed her eyes. Wan Yu's marriage was instigated by Mei Foran and Chen Rouqiu's family colluded, but the one who gave the order was Fu Xiuyi. In this lifetime, not a single one of these people should think of escaping. She wanted these people who caused Wan Yu's death to be returned 1,000 times and 100 times. Gu Yu was eating the snacks with relish when she raised her head to see Shen Miao's cold gaze, as if she was a noble foreign in a high position. In a moment, Gu Yu seemed to see Shen Xian's shadow. Shen Xian was a person who had killed and seen blood on the battlefield, and when he was angry, there was fierceness in his bones. At this moment, Shen Miao's eyes were exactly the same as Shen Xian's. She almost choked on the snack and swallowed it down before carefully asking, "Is young lady uncomfortable anywhere?" "Nothing." Shen Miao's eyes hung down, just thinking about some things. In today's chrysanthemum banquet and academy examinations, Fu Xiu-yi would also be present. Not only Fu Xiu-yi, there were also a few of Fu Xiu-yi's brothers. Now that there were 9 princes, each with their own merits, naturally they would be divided into camps. And Fu Xiu-yi's performance was the most harmless as he was on good terms with the Crown Prince's faction. Who knew that in the end, the Crown Prince would be abolished and Fu Xiu-yi would be the Crown Prince? She did not intend to help the Crown Prince. These people in the imperial family of Ming-Chi were the most ruthless. They saw these aristocratic families who helped their ancestors to fight for the country as if they were looking at an old dog. It was obviously these hounds who helped them to hunt the rabbits, and now that the rabbits were in their pockets, they were worried that the dogs would bite them to death. Thus they squeezed out the last drop of blood from the dogs and then killed them to cook them. The world was not benevolent and the Crown Prince was not righteous. So why should everyone be loyal? Why not watch the dogs bite each other? Xin Miao's lips slightly hooked up. At this moment in Yinbeitang, there were already many noble families. Even though today's academy examinations did not differentiate between males and females, the banquet was still divided into male and female seats. At the male seats, the youths and their fathers were busy getting to know each other as it was natural for the noble families to build relationships and support each other. Moreover, these youths would one day take over their fathers to carry the entire family, so it was good to make more friends. The females were not as frequent as the males and the matrons would often gather together to chat. Thus, the young ladies had fixed good friends. 3 to 5 of them who were familiar with each other gathered together to chat. They were both nervous and looking forward to today's chrysanthemum banquet. Occasionally, they would look up at the youths that they admired. Yi Lan fiddled with the fresh flowers on the small table and said, "Do you all have confidence in today's academy examinations?" "I do not." The female beside her smiled. "There are so many people, and if one's aptitude is average, one would be afraid. One only hoped that I would not be picked, and that no one would pick me to go up on stage. I do not seek to stand out and just do not make a fool of myself." Yi Lan pursed her lips. "At least one must try. One must know that His Highness Prince Ding will also be here today, and moreover the young master of the Li family that you admire is also here. The young master of the Li family has such outstanding words and would definitely go up on stage. Do not you want to seize this opportunity to perform well?" That young female pushed Yi Lan and her face revealed some shyness. "Nonsense." Zhang Xiaoxin laughed when she heard that. "That is right. By way, you must not be afraid. If one wants to talk about making a fool of oneself, there is still number 5 of the Xin family. No matter what, you are better than her." "Correct." Yi Lan also laughed like a flower. Every year in the academy examinations, 5th Xin would be in charge of amusing others. It is hard for her to have the face to come every year. Thinking that this year she would be here to perform her work, I want to laugh. One do not know what kind of clothes she would wear. Would it be like last year's horrifying bright red with a purplish red hairpin? A few young females started giggling. Enough. It was Feng Ning who suddenly opened her mouth. "Is it very funny?" Yi Lan was surprised for a moment before saying, "Feng Ning, you seem to be very strange recently. Why? Have you befriended that fool?" Feng Ning's face turned angry, and just as she was about to speak, she heard someone speaking from the other side. "AI, the Xin family's foreign is here." Chapter 32. Yi Lan's mother, Yi Foreign, had a good relationship with Ren Wanyun, and Master Yi and Shun Gue took care of each other in the official circles. Occasionally, Ren Wanyun would bring Shun Qing to the Yi residence as a guest, and Yi Lan had the best relationship with Shun Qing and was also good with Shun Yu. The matrons present and the male side of the banquet all looked over. Xin Gue and Shun Wan had been busy with political affairs recently and could not come. But the reason why everyone looked over was not because of Xin Gue and Xin Wan. In any case, the formidable great General Xin Xian had high prestige in the court, and when the late emperor was alive, the Xin family had a lot of privileges and was worthy of the title of the Son of Heaven. Whoever had the military power would have the right to speak. Thus, even if Xin Xian was not in the capital all year round, when the Xin family was mentioned, everyone could not help but respect them. Xin Gue and Shun Wan's smooth sailing in the court was also because of their eldest brother's influence. When the males looked at the Xin family, It was because they valued the power of the military, but when the females looked at the Shin family, it was like watching a joke. It was still all right for the Furins as they were older, and even if their hearts were filled with contempt, they would still say a few perfunctory words, but it was different for the young females. Perhaps everyone had a jealous heart. Shin Xian only had one D-daughter, and as Shun Miao's D-daughter, her identity was naturally different. It could be said that she was even comparable to a princess. And this genuine D-daughter of a noble family was an out-and-out fool. Stupid and ignorant, timid and cowardly. She loved Prince Ding, Fu Xiuyi, and made a lot of jokes. Unfortunately, the falling flowers have a yearning, but the heartless brook is heartless and everyone in the court knew about it. Not to mention that in front of her two outstanding cousins, she looked more like a country girl. One do not know what kind of good show would there be today. With His Highness Prince Ding present, Shin Miao would definitely dress up meticulously. Pei Lan covered her mouth as she laughed. Do you not feel that it would be funnier during the academy examinations? With Shun Miao's brainless character, one feared that she would take the initiative to go up on stage. At that time, that would be wonderful. Jiang Shaoxian also laughed. Bai Wei sighed and pretended to shake her head. One do not know what sin General Shun committed in his previous life to have such a daughter. Just as they were speaking, they saw a maid from Yinbei Tang leading a group of people in. The one walking at the front was Ren Wanyun and Chen Roqiu. Ren Wanyun was wearing a golden embroidered long robe. She was already plump and with her hair combed into a bun. It made her look even more noble and dignified, having the air of a matriarch of a household. Chen Roqiu was different. Even though Shen Yu was 16, she was still like a young married woman and wore a light green smoky skirt. With one look, one could tell that she was a gentle female from a scholarly family. Behind them were Shen Yu and Shen Qing. Shen Yu was wearing a light pink dress with a long skirt, and her long hair was tied up into a flying immortal bun with pink pearls. The pearls were of excellent quality and exuded a faint luster, attracting one's gaze. Shen Qing, who was standing beside her, was wearing a peach-colored Rui cloud mist dress with scattered flowers. It was also a dazzling color. Her hair was combed into a 100-flower bun, making her look energetic and bright. The jade bracelet on her wrist was bright and translucent. Both of them were young. One was gentle and beautiful while the other was generous. The clothes they wore showed that they were of high value and they were not bad. As the saying goes, a person depends on the clothes. There were many youths who cast their gazes over. At the male side of the banquet, a Darren could not help but praise, the daughters of the Shun family have good looks. There is still one more. Kai Lin saw the Shun Yu that he admired and his heart was happy. When he heard that, he could not help but ridicule. The Shin family also has a daughter of General Shun. That is the one with good looks. That Darren did not seem to care much about the rumors outside and did not know about Shun Miao's comments. When he heard Kai Lin's words, he thought that it was true and said, General Shen's daughter would definitely not be bad. Chapter 33. Oh. Kai Lin could not help but laugh and casually pointed to Shun Yu's entourage. That is not. He did not finish his words but swallowed it back down. He then saw that behind Shun Qing and Shun Yu, there was another person walking. She did not walk together with Shun Qing and Shun Yu and was alone at the back. She should have looked somewhat disappointed and timid, but one did not know why. She did not seem humble at all. Dark gold cloud embroidered robe and crescent moon phoenix tail skirt. The skirt was embroidered with large begonia flowers that seemed to be in full bloom under her feet. As the young female walked, flowers bloomed with each step and swayed gracefully. The young lady was probably feeling cold, so she wore a lotus green cloak made of cloud silk, which instantly suppressed the flowery patterns on her cloak, giving her a dignified air. As she walked closer, everyone then saw her face clearly. It was a young girl around 14 or 15 years old. Her hair was combed into a simple cloud bun, and there was only a plain silver hairpin inserted diagonally. At the end of the silver hairpin was a small begonia, which instantly lit up the dark sky with a touch of brightness. The combination was quite moving. Her complexion was originally fair, and when she wore the lotus green dress, it made her skin look even more creamy and her eyes were clear and bright like some kind of cub. There was a slight smile on her lips, but it did not seem to be a smile. Her nose was small and fleshy, and her mouth was rosy. She looked somewhat cute, but when everyone saw her, they would not think that she was a young female. Some people were born beautiful but did not have any temperament, while some people were not beautiful, but their temperament was moving. This young female's appearance was considered delicate and cute, and it would be too much to say that she was a stunning beauty, but that temperament made one unable to help but indulge in it. That kind of majesty and dignified demeanor showed a kind of noble elegance that made one not dare to have any rash thoughts. And the way she walked, her chin was slightly lifted and her skirt did not move at all. The movement of her hands was just right, not stiff nor casual, as if she had done this action 1,000 times, and there was not a trace of loophole. This kind of noble temperament and majesty that came from the heart shrouded her body, making her not look like a 14 or 15-year-old young female, but a woman who had been tempered in a high position. Xinyu, Shenqing, Runwan Yun, and Qinroqiu unknowingly became the background of this young female, like 4 maids that she brought along. And the one walking at the back was clearly their master. "Who is that?" Pei Lan muttered. Even as a woman, she couldn't help but be absent-minded when she saw this young woman. How could she possess such a bearing at such a young age? "Is this a guest of the Shin family?" Bai Wei asked. "I have never seen him before." The male side of the banquet was also silent. The way men look at people was different from the way women look at people. The people present were all officials, so they could naturally see the difference between this girl and the others. It was not her appearance, but her temperament. It was the kind of calmness that came after going through great storms. Facing everything in front of her, her attitude was noble, but it would make people feel her disdain from the inside out. It was like a leopard running into a flock of sheep, the feeling of being out of place. "Is this General Shun's daughter?" The Darren who spoke to Kai Lin before had some excitement in his eyes. "Really good looks. How magnanimous. The pupil surpasses the master." "Shin Miao?" Kai Lin was surprised for a moment, and when he fixed his eyes on her, he cried out involuntarily, "It is Shun Miao?" A stone stirred up 1,000 ripples. Everyone was quiet for a moment, and then instantly there was an uproar. Chapter 34. Shin Miao? Feng and Ning could not help but be startled. She and Shin Miao usually sat at the same table in Guangwantang, so naturally she could see more clearly than others. That was indeed Shin Miao. These days, Shin Miao's temperament was much quieter. Even though she was quiet in the past, but she no longer followed behind Shin Yu and Shen Qing and said those stupid and ignorant words. Her quiet appearance was not bad. Feng and Ning thought that Shin Miao had only become smarter and did not think that when she dressed up properly, her appearance would be so shocking. Due to the recuperation after falling into the water, she had lost some weight, and usually one did not notice it. Looking at it now, her chin was slightly sharper, and compared to the previous 11 or 12-year-old, she looked more like a 14-year-old young lady. It was as if she was a young beast that had been curled up in its nest and finally revealed its claws for the first time after sleeping for a long time. Pei Xiukai was also at the male side of the banquet. Even though he was only the calligraphy teacher of Guangwantang, people respected talented people, and he had quite a status among the officials. He was still young, and with such talent, if he were to enter the court as an official, he would be able to take up an official position. The officials were all smart and knew how to pave the way for the future, so Pei Lang would not necessarily not have a day of prosperity. Shin Miao's eyes swept across the male side of the banquet and stopped on Pei Lang for a moment. She knew that in today's academy examinations, even though Pei Lang was the calligraphy teacher, but during the battle of talents, there was a student who was arrogant because of his talent and challenged the teacher. Pei Lang's circulation of law was brilliant and it was well-founded, so that day it entered Fu Xiuyi's eyes. Afterwards, in order to recruit this talent, Fu Xiuyi did a lot of courteous actions and finally obtained Pei Lang, this great general. In this lifetime, this matter must not be allowed to happen. Pei Lang sensitively felt that the young female's gaze seemed to be on him from afar, with a sense of scrutiny, as if it was a wild beast weighing the value of its prey, which made his heart feel strange. He followed the gaze and looked back, but Shun Miao had already turned her head away. The Darren around were all exclaiming in admiration, "General Shun's daughter is still young and has such bearing. In the future, she must not be underestimated." Her appearance is also not bad. A blue-clad youth said, "Why did one not discover that this Shan Miao looks like a beauty?" The youths looked at the young female and once again looked at her appearance. Unfortunately, he's an idiot. Kai Lin recovered to his senses after a short moment of surprise. He was dissatisfied that everyone was looking at Shan Miao, but neglected Shen Yu and snorted. "You are the idiot." An abrupt voice exploded in his ears. Kai Lin was startled. He saw a dumpling dressed in soft red satin glaring at him angrily. He was short, but his aura was imposing. "My apologies." The green-robed young man who had rushed over upon hearing the news smiled at Kai Lin in a good-natured manner. "My younger brother was rude and offended you." Kai Lin wanted to scold, but upon seeing that the other party was the heir of the Count of Pingnan, Su Mingfeng, and that lump was second young master Su Minglang, he swallowed the words that were at the tip of his tongue. Su Mingfeng was Xie Jingxing's close friend. Who dared to provoke him? Eldest brother. Su Minglang pulled the corner of Su Mingfeng's clothes. "That older sister is very beautiful. You should marry her back to be a sister-in-law." Su Mingfeng's mouth stiffened. Luckily, Su Minglang's voice was very soft, and no one around heard it. He leaned over slightly and asked, "Second younger brother knows Shin young lady?" "I don't know." Su Minglang innocently played with his fingers. Su Mingfeng did not speak anymore. Shin Miao followed behind Ren Wanyun and entourage and walked to the female side of the banquet. Generally speaking, at the female side of the banquet, the Furins would sit according to their close friends, and it was the same for the young ladies. But Shen Miao would usually be in the Shen residence other than Guangwentang. Needless to say about Shen Yu and Shen Qing, there was no one in Guangwentang who was willing to be on good terms with her. She was not angry or afraid and minded her own business as she looked for a seat to sit down. She was not afraid of the isolation of these young ladies. On the contrary, she enjoyed this kind of quiet feeling. When those young ladies saw that Shen Miao was dressed differently today, they were somewhat jealous and wanted to see her make a fool of herself, so they deliberately ignored her. However, they saw that Shen Miao was sitting alone and did not look miserable. On the table, there were chessboards and leaf cards that were prepared so that the young ladies would not be bored. She thought about it and took out the chess pieces from the chess basket and started to play by herself. She was not proficient in the four arts. In the past, it was because of the second and third household's deliberate teachings that she disliked them, and after marrying Fu Xiu-yi, she did not have time to learn. So in the last lifetime, when she returned from the Qing country and faced Mei Forin, who was good at singing and dancing, it was not that she did not feel inferior. Those concubines in the inner palace compared her with Mei Forin and said that she was a boorish person from a military family who did not know how to appreciate things and was unbearably vulgar. No wonder Fu Xiu-yi turned a blind eye to her, the Empress. However, one did not need to know how to play chess. Even though she did not know how to play chess, but for the few years that Fu Xiu-yi was in the Qing country, she had studied a lot of military tactics. She did not know how to play chess, but knew how to use troops. This was war chess. The noble ladies watched from afar and saw that Shen Miao was calm and composed. That kind of cold and aloof demeanor clearly separated her from everyone else, as if she was above and others were below. Fifth young lady seems to have changed a lot, Yi Forin and Ran Wanyun said with a smile. Seems to have become a young lady. She could not say that Shen Miao was actually better than Shen Yu and Shen Qing, so she could only tactfully remind Ran Wanyun. How could Ran Wanyun not know? She was good at observing one's words and expressions. Just now when they were walking over, everyone's eyes were not looking at her, nor were they looking at Shen Yu or Shen Qing. It was obvious that they were looking at Shen Miao, who was at the back. She gritted her teeth in her heart. It seemed that Shen Miao had put in a lot of effort this time. Knowing that Prince Ding would also come to the academy examinations, she thought of ways to attract Prince Ding's attention and compete with her Qinger. She raised the teacup and looked at the men's side of the table with a smile. That's right. I'm not young anymore. The old lady loves Xiaowu. She said that first uncle is not here. Before I went out, she asked me to look for a suitable person. Chen Roadshow's eyes moved. Look for suitable people? Shen Yu and Shen Qing were older than Shen Miao, but they wanted to look for suitable people for Shen Miao. Naturally, it was not because of old Shen Forin's good intentions. Old Shen Forin hated the entire first household, so how could she let Shen Miao have a good life? Chun Rochio's eyes landed on Shen Qing, who was talking to Yi Pei Lan. Ren Yun seemed to be anxious to settle Shan Miao's marriage before Shen Xian returned. Why? Was it because Shen Qing also admired Prince Ding? And to help Shen Qing to remove the biggest threat? Just as she was thinking about it, she heard a commotion from the male side of the banquet. Zhang Foren said, "Prince Yu of the first rank is here." Shen Miao, who was holding a piece, paused and the white piece immediately fell. She looked up at the male side of the banquet and her eyes were very calm. Prince Yu of the first rank was the crippled widower that old Shen Foren wanted her to marry in the last lifetime. He was sexually promiscuous and was now 42 years old. If she was not infatuated with Fu Xiuyi at that time, she would have become a skeleton in Prince Yu residence. Chapter 35. One saw a middle-aged man walking over from afar. He did not sit with those officials and youths, but sat at a special seat far away. This man was about 40 years old and his face was dark, thin, and ferocious. He was wearing a rosin-colored brocade robe, and the accessories were extremely luxurious, but unfortunately he only had one leg. This was the current emperor's younger brother, Prince Yu. Prince Yu was the emperor's biological brother from the same mother, and when he was young, he saved the emperor's life from an assassin. Because of this, his left leg was injured and had to be amputated, becoming a cripple. From then on, Prince Yu's temperament changed greatly. He was cruel and vicious and had a perverse character. He even took in a house of concubines, and outsiders did not know the inside story, but the imperial family knew it clearly. This Prince Yu had some dirty eccentricities, and there were countless women that were played to death by him. Yuang Fei had already died 7 years ago, and this was very strange, but the Emperor and Empress Dowager were protecting Prince Yu, so the Wang Fei's family could only swallow this bitterness. Recently, there was a sudden news from Prince Yu residence that Prince Yu had the intention to take in a concubine. For a moment, everyone in the Ding capital was guessing endlessly. Prince Yu's status was rather high, and he was also doted on by the Emperor and Empress Dowager. Thus, choosing a Wang Fei must be of equal status. Those from noble families who truly loved their daughters would naturally not be willing to let their daughters enter such a wolf's den. There were also those who only used their daughters as a bargaining chip but could not wait to exchange their daughters for glory and splendor, even if they had to sacrifice a life. Looking at the previous Yu Wang Fei's family, even though they lost a daughter, did they not become more and more prosperous under the emperor's care? Shen Miao's gaze swept past Prince Yu and then landed on Ren Yun at the female side of the banquet. Sure enough, Ren Yun's face brightened and said to Yi Foren at the side, "Your Majesty really treats His Highness Prince Yu very well." They were all people who went through many hardships in the inner courtyard, and Yi Foren almost immediately thought of Ren Yun's intention, even though she somewhat despised Ren Yun for being too extreme in doing things. But since her master and Xin Gui were on the same line, she naturally had to help Ren Yun. She smiled and said, "Not bad. Even though one is older, one would still dote on others." Chun Rochio lowered her head at the side and slowly ate the snacks, but the smile on her lips was somewhat strange. Dote on him? No one would want their daughter to marry a crippled widower. No matter how much he doted on her or how powerful he was, it would be like pushing his daughter into a pit of fire. As she thought of this, she turned her head and looked at Shen Miao. Shen Miao patiently clung to the chess pieces and placed them step by step on the chessboard. It was as if she did not have any thoughts on anyone else. Chun Rochio suddenly had some uncertainty in her heart. Ever since Shen Miao woke up after falling into the water, she seemed to have changed into another person. Could it be that Shen Xian's flesh and blood had finally awakened? Shen Xian's entire family had a violent temperament, and if Shen Miao knew of Ren Yun's plans, would she obediently accept it? Just as she was thinking, she saw that Shen Miao seemed to be aware of her gaze and raised her head to look at her. That gaze was full of indifference, and it was the golden autumn of the 10th month that made Chun Rochio's heart turn cold. Shen Miao lowered her head and looked at the chess game. In the previous lifetime, she made a fool of herself at the chrysanthemum banquet, and when she returned to the residence, Ren Yun mentioned the marriage of Prince Yu's residence to old lady Shan. Ren Yun said, "Little Five's current actions do not have any good points, and even through the Shen family's face. Which noble family would be willing to marry a young lady like Little Five? Now that there is a good marriage in Prince Yu residence, Once little five goes over, she would be a Wang Fei and have His Majesty and the Empress Dowager to take care of her. That is a blessing. Even though her legs are not good and she is older, but our little five does not have any outstanding points, so it is not considered a loss for little five. It was said in a dignified manner, but in fact it was incomparably vicious. It was only after she spent a lot of money to bribe Rong Jingtang's maid that she got to know of these words. Old Shan Furen's heart already hated the first household. Shin Xian was born from the first wife, and at the beginning when Master Shan was alive, he favored Shin Xian, which made the second wife, Old Shin Furen, jealous. With great difficulty, Master Shan died, but Shan Xian had military merits and could not be touched. Even if she could not touch Shin Xian, she could still touch Shan Miao, and for a female, there was nothing more painful than letting her marry badly. Old Shin Furen and Ren Wanyun hit it off, and immediately sent someone to Prince Yu residence to bring up the matter. Shin Miao was angry and afraid in her heart. At that time, she was in love with Fu Xiuyi and hardened her heart. That night, she brought along a parcel and went to Prince Ding residence to request shelter. She did not care about her own reputation and deliberately let others spread the matter, thinking that since her reputation was ruined, the uncooked rice would be cooked and marrying to Prince Ding as a concubine would be better than marrying to Prince Yu residence. At that time, Old Shen Furen was so angry that even though Fu Xiuyi was angry in his heart, he did not treat her badly on the surface. Perhaps he saw the value of the Shin family's military power to him, and even though he was not warm to Shin Miao, he did not refute. Afterwards, when Shan Xian returned to the capital at the end of the year, what welcomed him was the fact that a daughter of the Ding capital had eloped. He was shocked and angry, but Shin Miao did not hesitate to go on a hunger strike to protest. At the end, Shin Xian had no choice but to use his military merits and finally exchange for the title of Ding Wang Fei for her. But no one would have thought that that was the beginning of the real nightmare. Shin Miao closed her eyes. All the mistakes in her past life seemed to start from today, and today was destined to be the turning point of her life. Those who owed her now all start to prepare to repay the debt. Hey, what is there to play alone? A voice suddenly rang beside her ear. Feng and Ning did not know when she walked in front of her, and there was some awkwardness on her face as she sat opposite her. Why not play a game of chess with me? But do you know how to play chess? Feng and Ning lowered her head to look at the chessboard. It was originally an unintentional casual remark, but with one look, there was some interest. After looking carefully for a while, she was unable to see any reason, so she asked, "What kind of game is this? I have never seen it before." "This is not playing chess." Shin Miao smiled. "This is fighting a war." "What? One cannot see it now." Shin Miao said lightly, "This kind of chess, one can only see it at the end when the pieces are swallowed. It was like a net, firmly and tightly covering. One would not be able to escape." Feng and Ning shivered. "What are you talking about? It is so creepy." She looked at the male side of the banquet, and suddenly her eyes brightened as she looked at Shan Miao mischievously. "Look, His Highness Prince Ding has arrived." At the male side of the banquet, Prince Ding, Fu Xiuyi, was wearing a blue robe embroidered with golden pine trees, green boots, and jade crown, looking very impressive. He was born handsome, and his bearing was rather cold, but his actions were amiable and did not seem to have the arrogance of a high and mighty prince. Along the way, it would cause the female side of the banquet to exclaim. Shin Miao lowered her head and clenched her fists into her palms. 10 years of companionship and wholeheartedly support, in exchange for a white silk and a blood debt for the entire family. Even a pair of children had lost their lives because of this. This person looked kind on the outside, but his heart was vicious. He looked fair on the outside, but in reality, he was ruthless. In the previous lifetime, this person granted her an intact corpse. In this lifetime, she wanted this person to die without an intact corpse. Fu Xiuyi, Bengong is back. Chapter 36. At the male side of the banquet, other than Prince Ding, there were only 2 princes, Prince Zhou, Fu Xiuan, and Prince Jing, Fu Xiuxian. The crown prince's health wasn't good, so he wouldn't participate in such an occasion. Prince Zhou and Prince Jing were born from consort Su Xian, and both of them had outstanding talents. Prince Zhou was extroverted and arrogant, while Prince Jing was reserved but shrewd. These two people were also eyeing the emperor's throne covetously. Everyone knew that the crown prince's health was weak, and there would be a day when the emperor would appoint a crown prince instead. Consort Su Xian was already deeply favored by the emperor, and in contrast, Prince Ding's mother, Consort Dong Shu, was much more low-key. If it was not that Prince Ding was considered outstanding, one feared that the position of the four consorts would not be stable. In the last lifetime, Prince Zhou and Prince Jing were involved in the fight for the throne, but relaxed their vigilance towards Prince Ding. Firstly, Fu Xiuyi and the crown prince had a good relationship and was always with the crown prince. He even personally searched for precious medicinal herbs for the crown prince. Thus the Empress was very satisfied with Fu Xiuyi. Thus the rest of the people felt that Prince Ding was just a follower of the crown prince. Secondly, Fu Xiuyi was usually aloof and disdained to participate in the matters of the court. In addition, Consort Dong Shu had a cautious temperament and spent all day chanting Buddhist scriptures, and without the support of a strong maiden family, one expected that Prince Ding would not be able to stir up any waves. But in fact, the one who finally sat on the dragon throne was Fu Xiuyi, who they thought would not be able to stir up any waves. Xin Miao picked up the leaf card and played with it. Just like this leaf card, Fu Xiuyi's cards were very bad from the moment he was born. Everyone thought that he would be eliminated from the start, but they did not know that he had never thought of using the cards in his hands. His cards were in the hands of others, and what he had to do was to snatch them. "Why aren't you reacting?" Seeing that she was silent and there was no love for Fu Xiuyi in her eyes, Feng Ning felt somewhat strange. "Don't you like him?" Xin Miao raised her head and looked at her. Feng Ning was shocked. That sharp gaze made her heart turn cold, and she almost could not resist the urge to kneel down. She did not know where her feelings came from, but she instinctively knew that her words had made Xin Miao unhappy. She paused and said, "Actually, I don't really like him. How can there be such a perfect person in this world? It doesn't seem real." This time, Xin Miao looked at Feng Ning seriously. She didn't expect that this arrogant and willful young miss of a big family could see through this. There were many people who were infatuated with Fu Xiuyi's appearance. As long as Fu Xiuyi was willing, all the young girls would fall for him. "What? There's actually a maverick," she slowly said. "Looks like you have someone in your heart. What nonsense are you talking about?" Feng Ning's small face suddenly flushed red. "Do not falsely accuse a good person." Xin Miao did not speak to her anymore, as she did not have the mood to inquire about a young lady's thoughts. She naturally had her own matters to attend to. The invitations for the chrysanthemum banquet were almost all received, and everyone should have arrived. Under the chrysanthemum field of Yanbei Hall, a huge platform was set up. This kind of stage dressing did not make people feel that it was vulgar. This was because the late emperor had once offered sacrifices to the heavens here. It was a high platform that was tainted with the aura of a true dragon. There were chess pieces stuck on both sides, and there were soldiers dressed in ceremonial attire with a red scarf on their head, beating the drums loudly. The drums rumbled through the sky, and the musicians played the zither. It was a song of virtuous scholar, implying that the imperial family was thirsty for talents. Today's academy examination was to select the virtuous talents for Ming Qi's country, and to select the true talents of the country. The music and drums entered the ears with a unique excitement and magnificence that made one involuntarily surge. Most of the people present were youths, and it was the time when they were filled with hot blood. They almost followed the music and could not wait to show all of their talents in front of everyone, to have a good future in Ming Qi, and to leave a thick stroke in the history of the Ming Qi's imperial family. Even if they were females, they could not help but reveal an excited expression. Even though they could not enter the court and become officials like males, their fathers and older brothers were the pillars of the country. Their own family was indomitable and under the glory. They were also bathed in the imperial family's favor, and their hearts were filled with gratitude. While the entire audience was shrouded in the excitement of the imperial benevolence, there was only one person whose eyes were cold and did not have a trace of emotion. Xin Miao's gaze landed on the person who was playing the zither in the center. The Ming Qi imperial family loved to be like this, to evoke the youth's heart to serve the country and use them to work for the decadent imperial family. However, at the end, once the country was stabilized, these men who shed their blood for the country would rarely have a good ending. When the cunning rabbit dies, the hound is cooked. Every time a new emperor took office, the old people would be eradicated, especially those officials who had experienced the dark fight for the throne and had seen the imperial family's dirty deals and bloodshed. How would the imperial family feel assured to let them rise up step by step? These stirring music would only become a funeral song in the future. And these youths who were immersed in the heart to serve the country would only die under the treacherous infighting of the imperial family in the future and become innocent victims. She could not save the people of the world, but could save her own people. Xin Miao gently raised her hand, and the corner of her right sleeve brushed past the edge of the table, and that bowl of clear tea was swept onto the floor. With a pa sound, a clear and crisp sound rang in the venue. It should not be heard, but compared to the rhythmic music, it was as if one of the silk threads was pulled up and messed up the other threads. With a pong sound, the rhythm of the music was disrupted. Like waking up from a dream, Feng Aning suddenly recovered to her senses and saw Xin Miao picking up the teacup on the floor and smiled gently. "Apologies, my hand slipped." That musician who was playing the intense rhythm on the stage and plucking the zither felt his brain explode and almost fainted from the pain. This kind of music was learned by Ming Qi from an imported Westerner and most likely had the intention of bewitching. It was able to stir up the emotions in one's heart, and this song was a war song. It was able to greatly amplify the fighting spirit and loyalty in one's heart. If the song was finished, some of the loyalty would turn into blind loyalty. The horror of this music was only seen after Shan Miao became the Empress. The imperial family of Ming Qi used this kind of music to confuse the younger generation and let these younger generations shed their blood for them. At the beginning, when the Xiongnu invaded, the imperial family let a large number of the imperial army guard the capital, and when they recruited new soldiers to the borders, they let these musicians play the drums on the stage. A large wave of youths joined the army without looking back, and some of them were not even of marriageable age. After being interrupted by Xin Miao, those musicians became weaker and weaker, and the final sound of the zither was no longer as impassioned as before. It was just an ordinary playing, and those bewitched hot-blooded feelings gradually dissipated, and everything returned to its tranquility. But Xin Miao's actions had attracted some people's attention. At the male side of the banquet, Fu Xiuyi and Pei Lang looked over at the same time. Chapter 37. Fu Xiuyi was a member of the imperial family and naturally knew of the imperial family's means. The crisp sound of the teacup falling to the ground seemed to be inadvertent, but it had already disrupted the rhythm of the musicians on the stage, and those bewitching tones could not continue. He naturally wanted to see who the culprit was. Fu Xiuyi himself had a cautious and suspicious character, so he did not think that the other party did it unintentionally. The purple-clad young female was holding her chin and talking to the person beside her. Her expression was cold and distant, but there was an indescribable bearing that clearly separated her from the people around her. "Who is ninth younger brother looking at?" Prince Zhou. Fu Xiuyi followed Fu Xiuyi's gaze and revealed a knowing smile. "Speaking of the few of us brothers, only ninth younger brother has not married. Did Imperial Father not mention many times about ninth younger brother's consort selection? That young lady looks like a young lady from which residence? She looks not bad. One do not know whose relative she is. Is there anyone who knows her?" "It is the fifth young lady from the formidable great general residence, this one student." Pei Lang was standing not far away and answered when he heard it. "The fifth young lady from the formidable great general residence?" Prince Jing. Fu Xiuyan's memory was not bad. Perhaps it was because Xin Miao's name was too big that even the imperial family were not unfamiliar with her name. He said, "Isn't that Shan Xian, General Shun's daughter? Seems to be called Xin Miao." "How could it be Xin Miao?" Fu Xiuyan smiled without a care. "The matter of Shan Miao chasing our ninth younger brother is known by the entire capital. Did not she fall into the water a few days ago because of ninth younger brother? If ninth younger brother really likes Xin Miao, why would it be so troublesome? Moreover, Xin Miao is an idiot. You see that young lady opposite, she has a calm and noble temperament. How could it be Xin Miao?" "Fourth older brother, be careful with your words. Xiuyi does not have such intention." Fu Xiuyi shook his head, but his eyes were looking at the purple-clad young female at the female side of the banquet. It was not that his heart was not shocked. What kind of person was Shin Miao? In his eyes, she was no different from those young females who admired him. Those young females who admired him would at least pretend to be reserved on the surface and knew some etiquette. As for Shin Miao, other than looking at him foolishly, she did not know anything else. Naturally, he would not look at an idiot who was the joke of the entire Ding capital. If it was not for Shan Xian's face, he would definitely clearly show his disgust. In his memory, Shin Miao always loved to wear bright red and green clothes and loved gold accessories. She would ferociously smear rouge and powder on her face, just like a clown on a stage, and it was even a stage in the countryside. And the purple-clothed young lady in front of him had creamy skin, graceful eyebrows, and an air of nobility that clearly distinguished her from the surrounding women. How could it be Shin Miao? He was not the only one who was confused. Pei Lang was also confused. As Shin Miao's teacher for 2 years, Pei Lang undoubtedly understood Shin Miao more than Fu Xiuyi. If one's appearance could be changed and clothes could be adjusted, the temperament of one's body would be different. Pei Lang was a scholar, and a scholar valued one's temperament more than others. Shin Miao seemed to have changed into another person overnight. So how could there be such a thing? He didn't think about the teacup just now. Although he also felt that there was something wrong with the music, in his heart, how could a little girl hear the problem in it? Moreover, Shin Miao was never an expert in zither skills. Everyone had their own thoughts, but the musician on stage had already finished. The academy examinations were about to begin. This year's academy examinations was different from the previous years. There was no differentiation between male and female, only civil and military. Even though Guangwen Tang required the students to be proficient in both the pin and the sword, but the rules had always been like this for 100 years. There were very few females who chose the sword, and in the literary category, it was basically the males who chose the sword. This was because these 3 subjects were actually ways for the court to select talents. Just like a Darren once said, in the examination of Jinshi, one would usually be a general or minister and would be extremely well known. In the military category, one would need to test riding, shooting, spear, weight-bearing, and so on. But after all, it was not a real military examination, so there was no need for military drills or a specific arena. Most of the females would be tested in the 4 categories of poetry, song, and literature, and this was a tacit tradition. Even if Ming Qi was considered to be open, it was much harsher towards females. It was not only Ming Qi, almost all the countries were like this. Females should stay at home to support their husband and teach their children, singing the wind and the moon. Ming Qi's academy examinations had always been divided into 3 parts: drawing, selection, and challenge. Everyone had to draw, and the examiner would mess up the order, and the situation of the drawing would determine what each person would draw for the academy examinations. In order to avoid drawing something that was too difficult, the females would draw from the 4 categories of literature while the males would draw from the military and literature categories. Because this was one of the unavoidable categories, Shin Miao would lose face in this category every year because she did not know any of the 4 categories of poetry, song, and literature. As for selection, it was the second stage. One could choose a category that one was good at to go up on stage to display, just like how Shin Yu often chose to play the zither and Shin Qing chose to calculate. As for the last part, it was challenge. This challenge was not selection but a challenge. Some people could go up on stage and randomly pick a student to be their opponent and compete in one of the categories. This kind of situation would often happen in a situation where the opponent was evenly matched. For someone like Shin Miao, challenging her would be an insult to one's own strength. But there were also those who wanted to see Shin Miao become a joke and deliberately picked Shin Miao to go up on stage to compare in one category. Naturally, there was no need to guess the outcome. No matter which category, Shin Miao would suffer a crushing defeat. So to Shin Miao, the academy examinations every year was a nightmare, and every year she would be treated as a joke by everyone. There were countless of such days. And it was the same this year. The main examiner on stage pretended to say something as usual, and the other 2 people took out 2 small wooden buckets from the back. The wooden buckets were filled with lots of paper. On these papers were the categories of the academy examinations, which were drawn by the students themselves. Both males and females would have to draw, and one of them walked over to the male side of the banquet and handed it to the male students. Another tall female took the bucket and walked over to the female side of the banquet and let the female students draw according to the order. Feng and Ning blinked her eyes. May the heavens bless me. I only hope to draw the zither and literature categories. I really do not know anything about painting and chess. She looked at Xin Miao. You do not seem to be worried at all. Could it be that you have a card up your sleeve? Or are you just smashing a broken pot? It was not that her words were harsh, but Xin Miao was indeed a fool who did not know anything. Xin Miao declined to comment. Was there any meaning in drawing? She did not know anything about the zither, chess, calligraphy, and painting. When the wooden buckets were passed to Shen Miao's table, Feng and Ning first drew, and after drawing the lot paper, she could not wait to open it and immediately gave a sigh of relief. It is zither. It is zither. This is great. These few days of zither practice were not in vain. Xin Miao, what is yours? Xin Miao's hand had just withdrawn from the bucket, and there was a white piece of paper in her palm that was folded into a long strip. She opened it, and there was a word inside. Painting. Chapter 38. Painting. Feng and Ning stretched out her neck, and when she saw the paper in Shen Miao's hands, she was slightly surprised before saying, Do you know how? This was the truth. Shen Miao was not proficient in the 4 arts of zither, chess, calligraphy, and painting. Not to mention the charm of a painting, one could not even draw it well. Seeing that Shen Miao did not speak, Feng and Ning also quietened down. Most likely people were very strange. Initially, she did not see eye to eye with Shen Miao, but now that Shen Miao was cold to her, Feng and Ning was more willing to talk to Shen Miao. She felt that the current Shen Miao had a special temperament that unconsciously attracted others to get close. Both of them were silent when they saw Xin Yu and Xin Qing walking over. Xin Yu smiled. What is the paper in 5th younger sister's hand? Let me take a look. Perhaps eldest sister, and I can think of some ideas. Xin Qing nodded her head. Correct? 2nd younger sister, and I have drawn books and paintings respectively. What is yours? Xin Miao did not speak. Xin Yu smiled as she went forward to take the paper in her hands and said unintentionally, 5th younger sister need not be afraid. There are still us 2 sisters around, and we'll take care of you. Feng and Ning snorted from her nose. Even though she did not like Xin Miao in the past, she also did not see eye to eye with Xin Yu and Xin Qing. Her mother was a powerful one, and there were many sisters in the family, thus one could see who was harboring evil intentions and who was scheming in a glance. What was the difference between Xin Yu and Shen Qing and those Shu sisters in their residence who wanted to fight for favor? It was nothing more than using Shen Miao's stupidity to set off themselves. Sure enough, when Xin Yu's words came out, Yi Pei Lan, who was at the side, sneered. Xin Yu, why are you saying these to her? Even if you come up with good ideas, one fear that she would not be able to handle it. Exactly. It is better to let Xin Miao prepare carefully. Jiang Shaoxian also smiled. Their blatant ridicule was heard by the surrounding Furins and young ladies, but they pretended not to hear it. On the surface, they looked serious, but the corners of their lips curled up. There was no other reason, as Shen Miao would be a joke in the academy examinations every year, and when it became a habit to be ridiculed, there was no difference. Even if such ridiculing behavior should not appear on the noble children. Do not say that about 5th younger sister. Xin Yu disagreed. 5th younger sister is also very diligent. She opened the paper and exclaimed Aya before looking at Shen Miao in surprise. It is a painting. 5th younger sister, you and I have drawn the same item. Feng and Ning looked at Shen Yu incomprehensibly. It was only the same item. What was there to be surprised about? Xin Miao, however, was well aware of it. Most likely Xin Yu felt that her stupidity would be able to set off her outstanding elegance, not to mention that Fu Xiu-yi was present today. Thinking of Fu Xiu-yi, her eyes darkened. What does 5th younger sister intend to draw? Xin Qing asked curiously. Do you want 2nd younger sister to give you some pointers? Her words were full of kindness and vividly portrayed the image of a big sister who loved her younger sister. If others were to see this, they would only say that Xin Qing loved her cousin very much. Troubling both of you to worry, Xin Miao coldly said, but since it is the academy examinations, it is better to abide by the rules. 2nd sister wants to help me. Isn't that cheating? The 2 people who cheat will be expelled from the academy examinations together. Second sister wants to go to such an extent for me? When her lukewarm words came out, Shin Yu's expression changed. Yes, this kind of behavior was considered cheating, but if it was in the past, everyone would only say that she was kind and friendly and would not put much thought into it. But after being specially pointed out by Shin Miao, everyone's gaze towards Shin Yu changed. In the academy examinations, one more person meant one more opponent, and everyone wanted to dominate the limelight. Shin Yu was on good terms with everyone in Guangwantang, but it did not mean that there were no people who were jealous of her. All the young females present were her opponents, and every year in the academy examinations, Shin Yu would always be the first in the female side, so there would definitely be resentment. If one could catch her weakness and let her off the stage and not participate in the academy examinations, then there would be one less strong opponent. Suddenly, those female students who were originally standing at the side with Shin Yu looked over covetously, including Yi Pei Lan and Entourage, who were on good terms with Shin Yu. Shin Yu shuddered as she naturally knew the pros and cons. Turning her head back, she saw Shin Miao looking at her with a smile that was not a smile, and her eyes were full of ridicule. If she were to shrink back like this, it would seem that her good intentions were fake, and if she were to take advantage of the situation, it would be hard to guarantee that these students would not grab hold of her weakness to not participate in the competition. Either way, it would be wrong. Shin Yu suppressed the resentment in her heart and looked at Shin Miao before reluctantly smiling. Since fifth younger sister has said so, then I would not dare to have good intentions on my own. Forget it. Feng Ning could not help but laugh and deliberately said loudly, one thought that one dotes on younger sister a lot. So it is just like this. To be scared by others and forget it, then what kind of sincere help is that? For a moment, those young females looked at Shin Yu with a meaningful gaze. Chun Roqiu also heard the movements over here, and she was somewhat flustered. Shin Yu was after all still young, and did not know how to deal with the situation in front of her. At the same time, her heart was somewhat cold. This Shin Miao was able to stir up other people's emotions with just a few words and let others follow her words. Such a powerful mouth. But she could not intervene as it was a child's matter, and if she as a mother were to intervene, then she would be at a disadvantage. Ren Wanyun and Shun Qing were somewhat gloating as one knew that if Shin Yu was too outstanding, it would cover up Shin Qing's brilliance. If Shin Yu did not end up well, then only Shun Qing would be able to support the Shin family. Shin Yu looked at Shin Miao and thought that if this younger sister had become smarter, she would also speak up for her at this moment. After all, they were all sisters in the Shin residence, and if it was spread out that the Shin residence was in discord, what good would it be? Moreover, Shin Miao had always been fawning on Shin Yu, and if Shin Yu was offended, then Shin Miao would no longer have any friends. But after waiting for a long while, she did not hear Shin Miao's reply. Shin Yu could not help but speak. Fifth younger sister. Does second older sister not need to think about what to draw next? Shin Miao's voice was flat. As for my side, there is no need. Seeing that Shin Miao did not have the intention to help her out of the predicament, and looking at the ridiculing gazes of the surrounding young females, for the first time, Shin Yu almost could not control herself and wanted to give Shin Miao a tight slap. She barely suppressed her emotions and gritted her teeth. It seems that fifth younger sister seems to have a well-thought-out plan. Since that is the case, later one will see how fifth younger sister will display her brilliance. It will definitely be extremely wonderful. Shin Yu bit on the words extremely wonderful very heavily. Finishing saying that, she flicked her sleeves and turned to leave in a huff. Shin Qing hurriedly followed after him. Feng and Ning looked at Shin Miao and asked, even though it is extremely refreshing, but why did you not leave a way out for yourself? When you go on stage, she will definitely grab the opportunity to ruthlessly ridicule you. I do not like to endure. Shin Miao looked at the chess game in front of her. Do not endure, do not turn back, do not be soft-hearted. Do not endure. Kill. She took out a chess piece and placed it on the chessboard. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.